I I clearly have a problem. I should really be making a video right now. I am making a video right now, and I should be like making a Clip Studio Paint video, which I'm not, as you might be able to tell, because I am busily playing Fallout 4. Because this is why I don't play massively multiplayer games. I don't play World of Warcraft. I never have. I've never played any of the major massively multiplayer games because I happen to be personal friends with a few of the people who make those games. And in the early days when they were first getting made, I sat there and I listened to these people talk about what they were trying to do and how they were trying to design things. And I knew from what I was hearing that I would just never stop playing them. I would play them forever. I would continue playing them all day, every day, and pay no attention to anything else. I would just get lost. I would get lost in World of Warcraft or Star Wars Galaxies or the older stuff like Ultima Online and EverQuest. I would not be able to keep my shit together if I started playing those games. And Fallout 4, or really any Bethesda game, is a similar kind of situation. Because, I will just play it forever. That is the kind of person I am. Alright, what do we got going on? Have we gotten through this particular engagement? Looks like we have. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to get into a firefight right at the beginning of all of this. I'm gonna loot these guys. One of the problems that I have with Fallout 4 at the moment is you probably noticed how bullet spongy the guys are. Because I'm kind of level 106 right now. And that's the only way Bethesda knows to increase difficulty beyond a certain point is to just ramp up the health of the opponent, which just uses up ammunition for no good purpose. But that is neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, I have work to do. I have shit I need to be doing. And I have done absolutely no preparation for this, but, you know, that is what it is. So, let me fire this up. And we will begin talking about eyes. In particular, let's talk a little bit about the structure of the eyes. What the hell? Okay, I was using the blender. Okay, so anyway, the eye sits in a socket that is basically a little box. Okay, and this little box is basically a square. Actually, let's move this down into the middle there, so it's easier to work with. And inside of that box sits the circle of your eye. Okay? It's not a very good circle. The important thing is that the top and bottom are basically what's holding the eye in. Now over here to the side, we've got a little bit of a curve where the nose is. And this differs depending on race. A lot of people don't talk about this, and I suppose some people might yell at me, but a Caucasian person has the kind of nasal bone coming out right about there, okay? It comes out pretty high up on the face, but if you have an Asian person or an African person, that nasal aperture is down significantly lower. In fact, on an Asian person, it can be really low. It can actually come in underneath the eye. And in a lot of cases, it just doesn't come out very far at all, okay? And it's the same way with African skulls. If you look at Asian and African skulls, the position of the nasal aperture, I actually have a file somewhere about this, but I don't feel like looking it up. And besides, we are talking about eyes. So let's talk a little bit more about exactly how the eye is structured. You've got the eyeball, and you've got within that, there's the iris, and the pupil is literally a hole in the center of the iris. Around the outside of the eye, you have a number of muscles that control how it moves, okay? And these are attached on the inside of the skull, and so on and so forth. Now, over top of the eye, you have two layers. You have a layer of skin here that is protecting the eye, and wrapped around that, you have a layer of skin here that is protecting the eye. And then you have a series of eyelashes, of course. This is not the greatest picture, but we're just talking about structure right now. So the important thing to remember here is, here's the eye in the skull, and the eye is not perfectly round. It has a bit of an outward divot on the outside in the cornea, and on the inside, it kind of divots in. So it's kind of, there's this circular muscle here that forms the iris. Then there's the outer part of the eyeball. And around all of this is a clear layer that dimples out in front of the pupil. So right here is the pupil. Light comes into the eye, and it comes through this clear cornea, and it comes back past the iris to the pupil and goes back to the back of the eyeball, okay? That's how your eye works. And the iris opens and closes by contracting and relaxing. We've already talked about muscles. The only thing they can do is contract and relax. When the iris is fully contracted, it is pulling the eye shut. This is a fully contracted iris. Doesn't look like this with a really huge pupil. That is a fully relaxed iris, a dilated iris. A fully contracted iris has the eye down to a pinpoint, okay? So that's the thing to remember, is that the iris closes and it opens when it relaxes. When it's relaxed, it's open all the way, and it's always exerting a little bit of energy, a little bit of constriction to constrict the amount of light that comes into the eye for the best focusing. At least it's trying to do that. But the important thing to remember on this is that that bottom eyelid down here goes around the outside of the eye, and the top eyelid goes around both of them. It also goes around the bottom eyelid. So the bottom eyelid here, if we actually draw the edge of the outer eyelid, okay, in here you've got this little bit, this little pink bit some people have noticed in the eye. There's the iris of the eye. And then the upper eyelid wraps all the way around all of this, okay? So the upper eyelid actually extends all the way around. It's like two layers of an orange peel, and the top layer, the top eyelid, is wrapped around both, because that bottom eyelid wraps around the bottom, and that top eyelid wraps around the bottom eyelid and the top. So that's an important element of how that's structured, which means here's the bottom of your eye, here's the top of your eye. You've got a little extra fold right here, a little extra crease. The same thing happens over here, but even more so because the nose comes down. There's what they call the Epicanthic Fold, which is the skin that comes down over the eye here, and it makes the eye look a little bit slanted. The stronger it is, the more the eye looks slanted. because that will come down farther based on where the nose is located. If the nose is located down lower, then it has to pull the skin farther down, and by pulling the skin farther down, that skin up on the top of the eye right here gets pulled downward. And if it's got to be pulled down to here instead of to here, if we pull it down to here, that comes down here and it has to come up like this. But if we pull it down to here, it comes down to here, and now it's got to come up like this. That's what makes Asian eyes look slanted. They're not slanted. They're not smaller. They're not slanted. It's the way that the eyelids and the skull interact, and it's the way that the skin of the brow is pulled down to the bridge of the nose here. Okay? That's what causes that difference in that eye formation. When you've got a Caucasian person here, then it only comes over a little, but when you've got an Asian person, it comes way down, and that looks like it's pulled more of, like the eye has less structure there. But it's just a flap of skin over top of it. It's what they call the epicanthic fold. Anyway, I'm going to turn that off, and we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to give that one same red color. Ow. And, okay. So we've gone over that basic structure of the eye comes over here and the eyelid goes under here. And you've got that little pink bit there. Now over on this side, you can't really see that because the edge of the eye comes all the way around. The eye behind this is always a circle. Now here's the important thing. People always say the eyes are expressive. The eyes are not particularly expressive, okay? What's expressive is the muscles around the eyes, the ocularis orbis and the medius frontalis. The ocularis orbis is literally, it's a muscle that circles the eye here, okay? And it can contract and relax, and it can pull the cheeks upward, and it can give you these little scowl lines. It can give you those kind of those anger lines on either side of the nose. It can pull the eyebrows down. It can lift the eyebrows up. It can tilt the eyebrows up and down. You can move the eyebrows independently if you practice it. The medius frontalis, is that correct? I think that's correct. Medius frontalis, something like that. But this little cluster of muscles right here, okay? Right over top of the nose and between the eyes, okay? That is difficult to control directly, but when you control these muscles around it, this muscle will get pushed around and creased and changed, and it operates largely all by itself. And you can see this, there was a doctor, what was his name? Dr. Jonathan Lightman, I think his name was. He did a lot of work on what are called micro-expressions, which are where in the split second before your brain can tell your face, make the face I want you to make, your face will just automatically do things on its own. It will automatically do stuff for like a tiny little fraction of a second, less time than you can control. And you can use that to interpret people's emotions. But when people talk about the eyes being expressive, they're actually talking about these muscles. They're talking about those muscles having the ability to make your eyes very narrow and pointed, the ability of them to make your eyes very wide, the ability of them to raise the eyebrows up, to bring the eyebrows down, to furrow the brow in the center, to create those little creases up here and really sort of draw in the sides of the eye there, and then you've got that big crease down here where that pulls up. And it's those bits and pieces around the eye that make things look expressive. Let's move on to another layer, and let's talk about, obviously, I tend to work with these big, distorted anime eyes. And these big, distorted anime eyes, funnily enough, have all of the same structure as your regular, everyday human eye, because fundamentally, we're just exaggerating the size of what you see. We're exaggerating the size of that eye. It's still the same structure here. You've still got the upper eyelid. You've still got the bottom eyelid. You've still got the eyelashes that come across on both the top and the bottom. And you've got the eyebrow up over top of it. And you've still got all of the same little creases and bits and pieces of detail that show you how a person is feeling. Now, with anime eyes, there's an additional kind of visual language around a lot of stuff, like in particular, the iris contracting all the way to a dot. The tighter the pupil gets on an anime eye, the less in touch with their surroundings a person is. When somebody is very aware of what's going on around them, they're going to have a very wide iris, or a very wide pupil in the middle of that iris. Okay? But as they get more and more drawn into themselves and freaked out, then the iris will still be there, but it'll be drawn down to a point. And as the outer area of the iris expands, that's emotional engagement. So what you'll see a lot of the time is you'll see an eye that's colored all the way across. It's nothing but iris. That's somebody who's more and more focused on their emotional state and not on intellectual thought. And it's less and less focused on the outside world. And then you have these little things, these vertical lines that come down the eye. Those vertical lines are what they call gloom. And gloom is negative emotion. So what you have when you've got an anime character and their eye is absolutely blank, it has no pupil, it has no white, it's purely colored iris, and it's got that gloom coming down over it. This is somebody who's fully overtaken by emotion. They're not thinking anymore. They're not even paying attention to their surroundings. They're operating on pure feeling, and what they feel is negative. This is typically somebody who's very depressed or somebody who's outright murderous. So when you see this in anime, that's kind of how this thing fits together. There's a huge and rich there is a huge and rich visual language around the eye in anime that I really can't go into much detail about here. But all you're really doing is exaggerating the pieces. The pieces themselves are still the same. You've still got the eyelashes. And I don't really do a great job on anime eyes, but this whole thing, this whole visual language around eyes, you have to watch a lot of anime to really get familiar with it. But the larger and rounder the eyes are, this is a state of emotional availability. A large round eye, what they call a moe eye, is an emotionally aware person. As the eye becomes narrower and more square, this is somebody who's not emotional. They tend to be more calculating and more cold. And as the iris contracts, they're less in tune with their emotions. And typically they also have a small pupil. That's generally something you only see in guys, but I believe Himiko Toga has this kind of eye. But she's very emotional. She has a very wide iris. And she's pretty aware of her surroundings, so she has substantial pupils. Except when she fights, then the pupils get kind of small, and it gets kind of creepy. But that's how all of that shakes. I'm doing a terrible job today. I did no preparation. I'm just winging it. I'm just like literally, I'm making this up as I go, based on like stuff that I've already looked at and stuff that I've already thought about. Because I spent all week playing Fallout instead of doing my work. I really need to do something about that. So anyway, some things to think about with eyes. We're going to put the nose right here. The eye is not perfectly round. It's not a perfectly symmetrical oval shape that's the same on both sides. It's not like that. In fact, it comes up about a third of the way in, it has a peak. And it has another peak about a third of the way in on the bottom. The peak on the bottom tends to be shallower. So what you have is kind of, when we really exaggerate those angles, you have something along these lines for how the eye is shaped. You have a higher peak on the top and a lower peak on the bottom. Well, a less pronounced peak on the bottom. But when you draw your eye, you're going to round that off, and this is on a realistic eye. On an anime eye, you're just going to be like really ridiculous about how big and round it is. That's the way those work. That's how anime eyes work. And then typically the eye is looking more up than down. And you can think of that as kind of hanging down from the top of the eye. And then you've got your eyelashes. In general, don't try to draw individual eyelashes. Just sort of make a slightly wider line up at the top. Unless you're like zooming really close in. If you're zooming really close in, then you might want to draw individual eyelashes, but just a few. You just want to do like this little thing. For a more realistic eye, know which side your nose is on, first of all. And yes. Know which side your nose is on, and connect the eye to that nose. Think about the peak and slope down more sharply 2/3 of the way along. Similarly, on the bottom of the eye, think about a gentler curve coming in to that point, because you're going to have the cheek coming up. The cheek will sometimes come up over the bottom part of the eye, depending on the expression. Now, what I want you to think about is how different sets of the eyebrow are going to affect the way an eye looks. If all you change is the eyebrow, let's draw a quick little eye here. We'll draw a quick little eye there, and then I will, you know what? I'll take that, move it onto its own layer. We'll turn off that layer. Then we'll Control D. We'll create a brand new layer, which, let's set that red again. And we're going to draw on this new layer, we're going to draw an eyebrow. So here's the eyebrow here. It's thicker out toward the outside, thinner in toward the inside. And now, let's take this. Let's take that eyebrow. Make it significantly larger. Let's take that eyebrow and let's change it a little bit. If we tilt it upward and move it over so that it's closer, then the eye looks a bit more suspicious. If we tilt it over this way, you can see this too changes the apparent emotion of the eye. Now, if you operate on top of this and you say, okay, if we leave that right where it is and we remove the selection, if you change the way that the eye is shaped, if you think about the eye narrowing somewhat, the top lid comes down here, the bottom lid comes up here, so you've got pupil just there, and the shape of the eye there. If you then put some creases around the outside of the eye and a couple more here, and you have this kind of thing going on with that eye, you can see that this has changed the general appearance of that eye, so it's displaying an emotion. And that's the assignment that I want to give for this week. And I'm doing a terrible job on this video, but I should be doing a better job. I need to do something about this. I mentioned in the Discord that I probably need to like schedule when I do my videos and not just like do them whenever, because shit like this happens. But the assignment for this week is to take eyes and give them different eyebrows and different positions of the pupil and iris. So you can see, like right here, you've got sort of a surprised eye. You can take that same basic formation and you can put that eye, and you can put that eyebrow right there. That's just a regular eye. And all of these are right eyes. You can think of the nose being right here. Well, they're left eyes, actually. They're on my right. Sorry, I'm facing the other way. But if you just think about how it changes the meaning of the eye to alter things a little bit and alter like where it's looking or where it's where the eyebrow is. If the eye is in a neutral position, then there's no particular strong emotion, but if you just move the eye upward, you know, this is kind of an oh brother kind of look. Think about how the eyebrows and the position of the eye and the little creases around the edge of the eye tend to make different expressions come out when you look at eyes. What I'm working on is the eyeball part of the expression, which I'm going to talk more explicitly about on Saturday during the stream. He said, punting the actual work part until later down the line. Like this is kind of an oh brother expression, and this is more of a why me expression, because the eyebrow is pointing more downward. If you pull the eyebrow in closer, then it's even more of a why me expression. Like, oh great, this shit again. It's that same kind of off-center thing. But just working with these basic iconic elements, top lid, bottom lid, iris, pupil, eyebrow, work with just that. And the idea of there are creases on the outside of the eye in about these locations. And work from that, and using just those elements, create different expressions, create different ideas of how the person is feeling looking just at one eye. Or on two, if you're feeling really like ambitious, then go ahead and do both eyes. This was not the greatest video. Hey, that's what I do, is not the greatest video. It's never the greatest video. Anyway, that's basically it. This was not great, but I did get some information out, I think. Yeah, I went over structure. It's not a great job. I know it's not a great job. I'm not pretending it is a great job. So at least it's not cringe. I'm not sitting there going, yeah, I did a great job. No, I did not do a great job. Yeah, that's okay, bye.